All right. So a very warm good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon the time zone you are in. And I'm very happy and delighted to welcome our panelists to the Consumer Engagement Summit 2021, Resonance 2021, organized by Enalito Automation. And my name is Kuldeep. I'm the senior strategist at Enalito, and we have been working in the field of machine learning and artificial intelligence for quite some time, where we have built the technology to understand consumer and product behavior. And we also filed a patent for our technology in order to solve some key challenges in the consumer space. And we realized data is the new oil, as they say. How much you can grow if you have the right data and if you are able to even derive great insights and actionable insights, you can do great things with it. Without further ado, let me make a formal introduction of our panelists today. First, we have on the panel is Jordan Kavuma. She's the Director of Marketing at Prima Coffee Equipment, founded in 2009 and born from a long line of family-owned, locally operated business in Louisville. Uh, Her brand started with the idea that everyone should have easy access to the product and resources that help make coffee great. That goal remains unchanged to this day, and that's everything that they do, from curating a catalog of the finest gear from across the globe to developing content that empowers consumers to find the right equipment and make better coffee. And they are extremely focused and trying to create a brand to help their consumers in the best possible manner. And we would love to learn more about the story of how their brand has started from Jordan. Jordan, welcome to the panel. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great. Next, we have on the panel is Lindsay Jin. She's the Director of Marketing and Communication at Outcast Food. She's an experienced founder with a demonstrated history of working in the public relation and communications industry. She has a Master's of Professional Communication degree focused in sport communication from Royal Roads University. And the brand, Outcast Food, has a focus on creating sustainable nutrition products to improve health, performance, and environment using their proprietary process. And they develop unique natural health supplements from surplus fruits and vegetable to increase nutrient longevity, and that reduces food waste and allows them to make food more accessible to those in need. And they have been doing some phenomenal work. Ultimately, the brand is trying focused on how they can positively contribute towards environment, reduce waste, and make food accessible. Lindsay, thank you so much for joining today. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. Next, we have on the panel is Lee Bernstein. Lee is the CEO of Loyalty Dog, and Loyalty Dog, they have built an amazing customer loyalty program platform, and they have been doing some phenomenal work with small and medium-sized businesses who benefit from their platform and technology. And their platform is able to provide low-cost solution to building loyalty program, and they can deliver an off-the-shelf as well as a program which can be connected with the point of sale device using their software. And Lee has been doing some phenomenal work in this space, and they have been doing analytic behavioral modeling to understand the purchasing habits of the consumers as well. Would love to learn a lot from Lee today. Lee, welcome to the panel. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you very much for having us.
Great. The first question that comes to my mind is definitely purpose. Okay, you all of you are in a very niche space doing something very phenomenal. So I would love to start maybe with Jordan to begin with. Jordan, how did you start it, and what is the purpose of your brand?
Yeah, so Prima Coffee, we specialize in equipment. So we don't actually sell the coffee, like the beans or anything like that. And probably within the last 10, 15 years, there has been a rise in specialty coffee. You'll hear it called often third wave of coffee after the, kind of Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, like those shops came in and made grabbing a coffee on the go like a little bit more accessible, but it wasn't considered specialty brewing. Then you had this third wave of coffee that came in where people were learning to really hone the craft of coffee. And so, like you mentioned before, Prima Coffee stems from a long, long line of family-owned businesses, and they saw this opening in this market and had a interest in it. Louisville, where we're based, is kind of a coffee city. So the purpose really came out of making this gear that everyone was starting to become interested in more accessible. Back in 2009, it was kind of hard to find specialty coffee brewing equipment from a commercial and a home standpoint. So we got to work in sourcing different pieces of equipment from different manufacturers and making sure that we really curated that catalog so that people knew that if it was on Prima Coffee's website, it was a quality piece of equipment and something that they could trust. And so they didn't have to do as much work figuring out that piece. But also because this was kind of a newer habit for a lot of people, we decided early from the beginning that we weren't just going to sell the equipment. We were going to put in a lot of time and a lot of resources to educate people on how to use it and how to get the best results. Coffee brewing is kind of a science, and there's a lot of variables, a lot of things to mess around with. And so it was really important to us to make sure that we weren't just selling high quality equipment, but that we were delivering a long lasting experience and enabling people to have the knowledge and ability to make best use of the equipment that we were selling. And, you know, that was back in 2009, but even today, there's always new coffee brewing equipment coming on to the scene. And so we're constantly testing and seeing, like, is this good? Is this anything that we should even be paying attention to, and do the work for the customer? And then we continue to put a lot of energy and money into creating an extensive catalog of educational content so that people know that if they have a question, if they're trying to learn something new, then that's something that they can come to us. So, I mean, you mentioned it when you were kind of introducing me, but our purpose is really to make this accessible to people in every sense of the word. So not only buying the equipment, but also knowing how to properly use it and get the most out of it.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a very, very strong purpose, I must say. And I think creating that niche itself, where if someone wants to buy a coffee gear for coffee making at home, I think making that name, making that brand recall to happen, I think you're putting in tremendous effort, and that definitely reflects from your store and the presentation and everything that you're doing. So that's tremendous, because this is a great learning that Jordan had just shared, which is how for a decade almost now they're focused. They're still doing the same thing just to make sure that the consumers are able to get the best experience in terms of the education, because a lot of people have a very different experience about coffee in terms of everyone just has the experience of consuming coffee from out of the cafe, but they cannot go beyond it. But once they start doing it at home, it becomes an altogether different experience. And I think now that we are in a stage where most of us are working from home all the time, that makes really rewarding, where you have your family members get together around a coffee machine and then have a chat. Nothing like that. So great, Jordan, amazing story. Let me quickly go to Lindsay as well and hear her story as well. Hey, Lindsay, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, thanks. My name is Lindsay Van Gyn, and Kuldeep, don't worry about it. I've never heard anyone get my last name right ever, so it's a tricky one. Outcast Foods was really founded on the idea that there was a lot of fruit and vegetable surplus that was just ending up in the landfill. And we all know about, composting and all those kinds of things. But regardless, all that compost ends up in a landfill where it creates an extreme amount of CO2 emissions. And so our founders, Dr. Darren Burke and TJ Gallardi, they both saw what was happening, and as two sort of lifelong vegans, they were sort of astounded that no one had figured out how to use that surplus that was coming from everywhere from grocers who, you know, the prettiest fruits only make it onto the shelves, to people that, you know, manufacture food. So if you think about baby carrots, well, they don't grow like that. They're shaved down to look nice and cute from larger carrots. So what happens to all that shavings? Well, some of it comes to Outcast. And our goal is to really, you know, stop that food wastage, with the purpose of, yes, feeding people, but creating incredible nutrition and food from that. And that's where the term upcycling really comes from. It's not just taking something and repurposing it. Repurposing is its own word, but it's taking something that has seemingly lost its value, and repurposing that value into something better. And so that's what we're doing with Outcast. And so it's multiple ways of doing this, is introducing people into plant-based options, whether you're a vegan or not, of which I am not, and having access to nutrition that is full of that nutrients. And we do have our patent pending technology that allows us to keep those vital micronutrients intact from when they come to us to our zero waste facility. They go through a dryer, and usually what would happen, it was sort of zap all that goodness out of it, but our technology actually maintains that integrity of the nutrients. So we're coming out with many more SKUs, but you know, our foundation is really sustainability, and we have ambitions to globally expand this technology. We also sell the upcycled ingredients, so you can see the products in the background, but we work with other companies like dog food companies, cosmetic companies, and they take our upcycled ingredients that we manufacture, which allows them to become more sustainable, and it becomes much more of a circular economy.
That's amazing. That's really tremendous, Lindsay, I must say, because I think what you touched upon is a global problem or a challenge, I think. So I think by finding the right solution for it and making sure that you are able to engage with all the stakeholders, I think that's the great way. I think more power to you. And because I didn't know, I think this particular aspect of, yes, food wastage is happening, but how this problem can be tackled, and there's a solution for it. And I think if more of this becomes mainstream, it's just a matter of time where, as you said, the circular economy, how many stakeholders and lives can be improved for that matter. Excellent, excellent, amazing. We would love to touch upon some of the product side of things going forward in the next few questions. Let me quickly go to Lee also. Lee is doing something phenomenal in the field of consumer engagement. Lee, would love to learn how you started Loyalty Dog, and what are your thoughts on what's happening in today's retail?
Okay. Loyalty Dog started by accident, as it happened. And we started off with a completely different direction. We set up a website by a bunch of friends who love drinking whiskey. And they were also doing a lot of traveling around the world at that time from where we live. And so they were always emailing each other about where the best whiskey deal was, in which of the duty frees they were going through that could buy the best whiskey. And from that, set up a website called DrinkTin. Still out there, you can go look at it, drinktin.net. Sounds like you know what. And it was a social network of people who like to drink. And people put up their photos up, they put up their silly stories about when they were drinking, what they were drinking, what happened to them when they were drinking. It was a real blast. It was great fun. And we had that 120, 130 members. It was very much a family thing for friends and family in the area. And then suddenly the Brazilians came. Some media network picked it up in Brazil, and suddenly there were thousands of users on this thing. And then we put a bunch of bars on it and a bar finder, and it was a whole big thing where you could actually find out where to go in any city, find a bar you could go to. Had an app and everything. And then was born a new idea, which was to, now in America, you guys probably know, a lot of people don't know this who are not American. There's a 3-tier system in the alcohol industry. It's very, very regulated, and the manufacturer can't speak to the consumer directly. So we were trying to get into that space, and with promotions and benefits for the consumers from the manufacturer directly, with a scanned app. So you could scan, go into a bar, scan. The bar would for example, give you a Budweiser as a free promotion. The customer would scan their loyalty pass or their pass. It was, at that time, it was just a pass. We would collect the data, sell the data back to the manufacturer, going around the system, so the manufacturer wasn't doing it directly himself. Unfortunately, that wasn't so as straightforward as we thought it was going to be. Every state's got its own regulations, and it became a nightmare to manage. So, but we had this technology of this thing called a pass, or a loyalty pass. It's based on Apple technology. So if you remember when you used to fly a lot pre-COVID, you used to get a boarding pass onto your smartphone. And it's the same technology that we use for our loyalty pass. And then we rebranded it as a loyalty program for small to medium-sized businesses, because we had that technology built into what we were doing. And we very strongly felt that the big businesses, if you're I guess Walmart or Costco or any big chain. I mean, I'm not American, so I don't know all the big chains or the big stores. You could actually put together a really powerful loyalty program and get it out to your customers. We felt that smaller mom and pop shops, if you like, businesses with 5 or 6 or 7 units in the chain it was more difficult for them to do so. So the loyalty program that we've developed has been specifically designed for a small independent merchant to come along and be able to implement it very, very quickly and get up and running with a loyalty program for their customers and it's smartphone based, no plastic cards. So we're sustainable too.
Wow, that's amazing. So from where you started and where you are, wow, that's a big journey. And how some ideas are which are done just for fun and and not just, it's basically without thinking too much, how they can become big, have the potential to become big, and from there, how the next product comes up. Excellently. Let me now go to Jordan. And Jordan, so you have built this amazing place where people can just look for a gear related to coffee, and you have a huge catalog. So definitely you are in a very interesting space. How do you see competition, or how do you distinguish yourself vis-a-vis competition? What are some of the things that you do in order to make sure that you are able to distinguish yourself from the competition and give that value advantage to consumers? Because ultimately, unless and until the customer makes a purchase on your store, you're not giving anything to the consumer, or he's not contributing, but you're still adding value in terms of the knowledge that you're sharing, and everything that you are giving, the right information and the access to that information, which is somewhat scattered, but you are bringing it at one single place. So what are some of the things that you are doing for your brand?
Yeah, I mean, as far as equipment within our industry, there isn't a lot that you can do with price. Things are pretty well regulated. There's map that we have to stay within. So I personally kind of like that. I don't really like playing the game of trying to be the lowest priced product out there, and instead selling based on the additional value that you get from choosing our company over somebody else. So that's kind of taken off the table. And then, as you touched on, I would say within the other direct competitors that we have in the U.S. market, because we don't really ship internationally. We will on a case-by-case basis, but that's kind of another thing within our industry. They have distributors in different countries, and so you have to kind of stick to your country. So within our direct competition in the U.S., we definitely produce the most content, and that will remain a priority for us for the foreseeable future. I don't see that changing. And so I think we bring in a lot of traffic through that content. It's not just post-purchase, but it's a lot of brand awareness. Somebody trying to Google how to do a pour over coffee. And then, our articles pop up and then they land on our site and they find what they need. But we've also found over time that creating a very, very, very user-friendly website leads to more conversions and less, a customer straying to go somewhere else because they've gotten frustrated and not being able to find what they need. And because we do have a larger catalog, we have about 1,700 SKUs. And so there are much larger catalogs out there, but that's still a substantial number. And so we've had to do a lot of work with optimizing our search on our website, making sure that customers are finding what they need as soon as they can, and also optimizing our categorization and how things are sorted and making sure that it makes sense as to where something's being plugged. And then starting this year, we've implemented some AI on our site and populating recommenders and articles and things like that based on customers' past browsing and purchase history so that they're having stuff custom delivered. I think in the age of Amazon, that's kind of expected these days. Customers don't want to go to a website when it's not customized to them. So, but I mean, I think the two kind of pillars is for us are, the content, bringing people in and kind of keeping them around because they trust us and they trust what we're putting out there, but then also spending a lot of time and energy considering how a customer experiences our website and making sure that they aren't coming up on any sore spots, everything from like page load time to like checkout page, just everything, making sure that there's never going to be like a split second where somebody, is scrolling and they get frustrated and they bounce somewhere else. Cause it's the internet that we're playing with these days. So everything has to just be fast and make sense for that specific shopper in that session.
Interesting. So you're paying a lot of attention right from the discovery stage till the final checkout stage and making sure that experience ultimately is kind of a seamless experience and more education and giving the right access of information. And I think that matters a lot in today's time where consumers' attention spans are reducing day by day, where it's so easy to switch a tab and move to the next and open something. I think that plays a pivotal role, and you have a huge catalog. So definitely getting those recommendations and all definitely helps the consumer. But that's a great insight that you touched upon, how you are constantly focusing on creating and having more content available, which ultimately resonates with the consumers. And people generally may not be knowing about the brand, but I think they discover the brands through the content that is there. And it can be anything, a blog, a video, or a podcast. It can be anything. And I think it ultimately adds value. People may not just look at the blog and buy it then and there itself, but definitely they come back just to see more and explore more. So great things can happen there. Yeah.
Well, we're finding too that the more relevant content that we can create that drives organic traffic, our costs for paid advertising go down because we have a larger audience to pull from. People are naturally finding our content. So it kind of goes twofold because we do invest a good amount in paid advertising through Google and Bing and all those other channels. So I mean, it definitely drives some good organic traffic and it's great content for the site to build, loyalty and trust with the customer. But it also plays a role in reducing costs in other areas of the marketing budget, which is always exciting.
Excellent. And I think you mentioned it rightly, having that right balance between organic and inorganic growth and how it can really help the brand in the long term, where you're able to reduce your customer acquisition cost gradually. Like in the long run, that's extremely beneficial because I think the cost of acquisition is rapidly increasing day by day. It's the different channels that we have. So the organic content can really help to make sure that the paid ads or everything that's where a lot of money goes in, maybe reduce substantially. Excellent thought. I think this is a great advice and insight for entrepreneurs out there who are thinking in that direction, where definitely in the early stages, a lot of paid ads get done by brands in order to make that awareness and get that early traction. But that's not sustainable in the long run. So I think that's a great piece of advice that Jordan had just shared. Let me quickly go to Lindsay also. And Lindsay, as she has mentioned earlier about her purpose and the story behind her brand. Lindsay, what are some of the things you, as someone who's heading marketing, that you do uh, on a regular basis in order to kind of make that distinction and let the consumers understand how we are different from other brands?
Yeah, I love this question so much because we are firmly like implanted into the nutritional category with, we have very few SKUs. We are a very new company.
Hmm.
So we have 6 SKUs right now,
Uh-huh.
coming out with like a whole bunch more soon. But the like, plant-based protein powder is very much just like it's, there's a lot of competitors out there. People are always looking for a protein powder.
Yeah.
One of the things that when I came on with Outcast, I work out a lot. I never used protein powder because I was done buying these big giant tubs from Costco and then taking one sip and being like, cool, now I have like 10 pounds of protein. I don't know what to do with.
Wow.
It tastes terrible. So you couple that with plant-based protein and you run into people that are like, I'm plant-based and I just want something that tastes good. And luckily, our stuff tastes incredible, plant-based or not. But the real way that I think about our story and our company is in my brain, we have competitors and I see them because I
Mhm.
see you, Vega. I see you. But the thing is no one has what we have, which
Mhm.
is incredible tasting
Yeah.
products. And we are actively en route to helping cut down on CO2 emissions and like bring a true awareness to people about how we view and treat food.
Mm.
Since coming on with Outcast, I've already been a hyper vigilant sustainability advocate. I'm firmly in the activist portion at this point, but
Yeah.
I think that it's the story, right? And like when I think about our competitors,
Mm.
and I won't mention them again, but when I think about them, I see us as being our very own
Mm.
company that like no one else is doing what we are doing.
Mhm.
And so when I think about like how we stand out, our story is what makes us stand out. I live in Toronto, but our home base is Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Mhm.
And it really started with, the two people that just had this idea and
Yeah.
creating some things that are so incredibly great, but like it's the story behind it and what we can do with that technology. So right now we are really on this push to talk about our upcycled ingredients, which we are coming out with new SKUs.
Mm.
And again, like I love what Jordan was talking about like that educational component, that content creation component. It's really about like, it's, people can just buy us because we're protein powder, but we are a food company.
Mm.
And it's relating those stories together in
Yeah.
that broader brand awareness while driving conversion. So it
Mm.
really is this like, it has to be a very well thought out, perfect storm of how
Yeah.
you manage both of those things. Our education pieces, I'm sure Jordan can relate to, is extremely comprehensive.
Mhm.
For people coming in just to try protein and for the first time, we have a lot of first time customers that bought us that have never used protein powder before. And we know this because we get messages on a daily basis about what do I do with this? And
Mhm.
those ones are my favorite because I'm like, they don't even know how to use protein powder. Like this is incredible. So it's about attaching our story, but also
Yeah.
getting to those conversions and having people be return customers, have
Yeah.
us be a staple in people's daily lives.
Mhm. Interesting. Wow, that's amazing. So, as you mentioned rightly, knowing your brand and how to make sure that you are ahead of the competition and how you can distinguish yourself. This is what Lindsay had just touched upon in terms of how they are able to influence or basically engage with those first time buyers who may have never bought something like that, and I think the messages that you're getting, I think that's a big validation. I think from because if coming from consumers is the best feedback that one can get, and I think that's the biggest kind of education, because a lot of we can do a lot of market research, surveys, but that may not give you that insight. But one little feedback, one constructive idea from a consumer can literally change the way things are being done. So excellent, Lindsay. That's a great thing.
I
And
would like to add one thing really quickly that
yeah,
with that said, we have every opportunity just to be a plant-based protein
mm,
company.
yeah,
And it's sometimes about knowing your target demographic, but
mm,
knowing what other demographics are out there that
yeah.
will relate to your product.
Interesting. That's a very, very interesting insight. Now let me go to Lee and ask him about customer retention. Is a very vast
Mhm.
topic, but within that, let me touch only to retention within e-commerce or retail. Uh, what are some of the strategies that you advise or suggest to, let's say, early stage e-commerce businesses, or let's say growth stage e-commerce businesses? What are your thoughts?
Okay. The first thing, and it's a fundamental, no loyalty program or anything else or education program um, will replace it, and that's to have a really good product. Okay, and on top of that, really great, excellent customer service. Okay, because the customers today, I see it with my own kids, people are just more impatient than they ever were.
Yeah.
And so there's very little room to make a mistake, even the genuine one. So you've got to be on top of that all the time. So the first thing is great customer service, great product, and great value proposition. Those are the three fundamentals. Doesn't matter what business you're in, doesn't matter what you're doing. You've got to have those before you do anything else. On top of that, you can start layering all sorts of other rewards and benefits and attractive propositions for your customers to keep them interested in what you're doing and coming back. And they can be, as we've touched upon just now, and it's something that we're building ourselves as well, or in the process of building. And I'm very pleased to hear what Jordan is saying and what Lindsay is saying about education and giving people the opportunity to learn about what you're doing and to get really involved and to give them all the information that they may not have, or they might not even know they need it. But you've got to be able to think about it and put it there and make it accessible to them as easily as possible. So giving people information, giving people great customer service, giving people a great product and a great value proposition. On top of that is you start talking about, in our case, we talk about loyalty. And we integrate our loyalty program into the actual transaction itself as it takes place in Shopify or in WooCommerce as online stores, or in other point of sale systems where you go into the store and it happens at the cash register. So it's not a separate transaction, it's part of what's going on. And there are two big systems or two big ways of looking at loyalty. One is a basic buy 10, get 11th one free, or point system of that, a single point system. And then there's multiple points where, like the airlines, what the airlines do, and you collect airline, you get points, and you can spend those points, redeem them for other things. It's both valid, both good, depends which customer base you're in, depends which demographic you're in, depends which products you've got to go with. But the most important part of either of those two areas is the element of surprise and delight. It's a bit of a phrase that we use as the catchphrase now. You've got to keep it fresh. Okay, you can't just rely on collect 25 points and then you get something. You've got to add extra bits into it all the time. And you've got to be creative, you've got to be on top of it and make sure that you're surprising and delighting customers. Oh wow, I have three things I suggest when I talk to customers about this. It says they should think about the rewards they're putting together in three ways. One is to think of what the customer's response to the reward that you're giving. Oh, that's nice. Thank you very much. I mean, as a first tier, that's a nice, warm feeling that you get from transacting something and getting something in return. Then it should be, oh, that's something I'd kind of like to save up for. So you can create a situation where you're collecting some points, not too long, because otherwise people drop off and they get bored. We spoke about attention span before. And then the third category, and this is the one that we all love, is the reaction where the customer goes, oh my God, I love you. Okay, from something that you're going to give the customer. and to try and think about what are the things in your business you can do to give the customer that sense. And in terms of building your retention strategies around that. And it's got to be part and parcel of the transaction itself. It can't be a separate transaction, in my opinion.
Excellent. Wow. So that's the third point. The more it happens, the best. I love this brand. If that kind of delight and wow,
Correct.
that's what they say, comes from every consumer, wow, the retention and the customer acquisition cost and the referral.
It goes
Wow.
down. Customer lifetime value, customer acquisition cost, it all starts going down.
Excellent.
And we see it in the data that we see. We see on take a customer and we look at all the transactions that take place. You look at all the transactions of the people in the loyalty program.
Yeah.
Because we get all the transactions, both the ones that are loyalty members and the ones that are not loyalty members. And it's very, very clear that the people who are part of the loyalty program, they spend between 20 and 40% more than the people who are not in the loyalty program. Right. And they're coming more frequently.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's like the best way a brand can retain the consumers and have the engagement going. And ultimately, the consumers are someone who themselves are the brand ambassadors, that they themselves share the message forward. Moving forward, my next question for all of you is around the times that we're living in. I mean, it has evolved. I think whatever was happening 10 years back is we have reached a stage where your smartphone has become so powerful. And maybe in the next 5 years, it may become extremely powerful. It will be a supercomputer, I must say.
It is.
And it's going to open up new ways for consumers to engage with brands, to experience the products. For example, in case of Shopify, I was reading last year itself, where they were trying to do some amazing things in the field of VR and augmented reality, for that matter, which will allow consumers to experience products within their own environment. And ultimately, that's going to be a great enabler in conversions, ultimately, because people want to touch and feel the product before they purchase. So if that starts happening, it's going to be a game changer. What are your thoughts? How are you thinking in that direction? I mean, you guys already have some things set in place for your marketing effort, for engaging with your consumers. But let's say, what are some of the new things you want to try out, which you have never done so far, in order to make sure that you are ahead of the curve? I know this question sounds definitely more progressive, because the way things are moving, technology is growing like at a scale which is unprecedented. It has never happened before. So have you guys, within your own observations or things that you read or know about, what are some of the things that you want to try out in the next couple of years in terms of new technologies to acquire those new customers? Jordan, any thoughts?
Yeah, we actually tried augmented reality. Trying to think when we implemented it. It was end of last year. Honestly, we did not see it being anything that helped conversions. We disabled it from our site. It was kind of what it costs to have it versus what we saw in an increase in average order values or conversion rates or anything like that. There was not a correlation that justified keeping it on our site. So honestly, things have been very fast moving since that happened. And we've had conversations a couple times of saying, we need to sit down and really think through what happened there. Like did we not promote it in a way that was most appealing to our customers, or do we just not have the customer base that really cares about that, or do we not have the product line that really cares about that? We thought, because our catalog spans commercial equipment that you would see like in a cafe, all the way down to equipment that you would use at your home. So we kind of had in mind in the beginning, like maybe there's a subset of our equipment that is larger, that it would be cool to kind of see it in your space. Because I know for myself as a consumer, I've used the augmented reality when I'm like purchasing a rug or a couch or something like that, where I want to see it in my space. But But yeah, honestly, and even the platform that we were using to have the augmented reality on our site, we could see how many people actually clicked to use it. And even that number was like surprisingly low. So
Interesting.
I don't want to say that we're the perfect case study for the future of AR on e-commerce sites, because I do think that there are industries that greatly benefit from it. But yeah, it would probably take a lot for us to try to go back and implement that again. Or if we heard from our customers that they would really like something like that, then we might think of doing it again. But we were not incredibly impressed. So, I mean, the only kind of a different thing that we're looking to implement, and I don't know that this is really considered like high tech by any means, but we are expanding our email marketing strategy to include SMS as well as email, and seeing good results from that. And it's in its very early stages. We just did it in the last 6 weeks. So still exploring and testing and segmenting so that we can see, you know, which customers want the email and which customers want the text, and what kind of text do they want, and how do they want us to interact with them. But it's something that I'm very excited about. I in the land of marketing, I just really get thrilled when any kind of like segmentation is possible. That's just something that I always kind of nerd out on. So whenever we brought in SMS, I was like, oh, cool, like another thing I can segment. So I'm anxious to see how it goes. And like I said, I don't know that text messages are very like cutting edge technology, but being able to like market to people on their phones, I'm enjoying it.
Great. I mean, that's a great insight, Jordan, you shared. Like, so you already tried it, like something which is completely fresh and new, and that's how you got to know. And definitely there's a learning curve for every consumers, like just like how like things are transitioning. Like earlier, everyone used to pay by like cash, then the Apple Pay happened, and the whole thing changed the way payment industry has evolved. And maybe in the future something else will happen. But I think you're trying it, which is commendable. And ultimately, because I think all these tools are enablers, and consumers need some time to kind of learn that and try that and then get that experience. And I think in your case, I think because something like a coffee machine before buying, if I'm not going to an offline store, if I'm able to see it beforehand, how it, where I can place it, just like how IKEA does for that matter for their furniture. So, but it's good to know this insight that, and you're thinking in that direction that, okay, why it didn't work or what consumers are looking for more. So those are some of the things which can really give you great insight. So great. Lindsay, how about you? What are your thoughts? Definitely, like your food business is something which is again, which is evolving. Ultimately, consumers these days are definitely checking the packaging, checking the ingredients. I mean, how have you tried something new or thinking in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, we're always thinking in that direction. We're like implementing either sort of like, you know, grander high tech right now is not, you know, our priority. We have our own high tech stuff that we're really focused on developing. But when it comes to being like right now, because we're in Canada and in Ontario, especially having a tough time with our reopening. So it's been really, it's been incumbent upon our marketing team to sort of figure out like how to drive sales and how to support our retail team as well. We just had a meeting this morning where it was more about like, how do we take the marketing and our retailers and push them together to come up with some sort of tactical ideas. And in terms of implementing, like, you know, all these, we're always looking to find out more about our audience or, you know, more about our customer behavior, because we are so new. If you look at our online growth over the past year, like when I came on, Outcast wasn't even really a brand yet. And that was under a year ago. And we've increased our D2C sales over 4,000% in the 1 year.
Wow.
And a lot of that has to do with slowly integrating where we can actually market. And what I mean by that is like social media platforms is one way that we have, like, we don't go into it and say we're doing YouTube, we're doing TikTok, we're doing that, we're doing all of them. We've systematically become very good at one platform, and then we've gone into the next platform and really done a lot of testing to see what that platform is best used for.
Yeah.
And then once we have a handle on how we best use it for our purposes, then we can go on to the next platform. And so now we're into the iteration of TikTok, which is head scratching for some of us, and on our younger team, they're out there making us original content that is just doing very well. So I leave that to them. But I think an important way to think about it is that, like, I'm not looking to be at the forefront of the technology that we use to market. What I'm more concerned about is how we reach the segments of customers that would be interested in our product.
Right.
And so I know there's technology to use that. We are still finding out who our target demographic is, but we're also looking beyond that box that we tend to put ourselves in. Is like, I hate the question, what's your target demographic? Because it's like, yeah, I can tell you that, but it's like, what's more interesting to me is finding out the breadth of the demographics that we could have access to. I always liken these things to, like, you only know what you know. And using technology to find out more of what you don't know is a really good way to do that. I tried, like, we're on Shopify, so like we don't want to be bogged down with a million different apps. It slows down the website. But what we do want to do is find the ones that have like that real intrinsic value that can help us formulate the insights that can then turn it into consumer engagement, brand awareness, conversions, and ultimately the repeat customer. So it's less about like, and I'm fascinated by all of this stuff. I used to work in advertising and AI, and I get that. I think if I was going to give advice around this stuff, is like, don't try and be ahead of the curve. When you're ahead of the curve, I feel like it's kind of like that idea of like, I'm going to go viral. You try and be ahead of the curve, you're probably not going to be ahead of the curve. If you look and really focus on your business, what you're selling, how to sell it appropriately, all of a sudden you will be ahead of the curve.
Excellent. That's a great insight. And as you mentioned rightly about the importance of channels and how you are moving from one channel to the other in order to make sure that you are able to touch your target audience, ultimately makes a huge difference. And I think because we have so many channels to engage with, and I think knowing the target audience, the demographic, and the buyer persona, I think knowing all
and knowing
those.
when to quit when it's not working.
Experiments ultimately, because I think that's what drives in e-commerce. I think a lot of experiments have to be done in terms of whether the messaging is working or not, whether it is resonating with the consumers or not. That's what matters ultimately. And I think that's a great insight that you shared, like how the brands need to approach this when they are in a growth or early stage, for that matter, in order to make sure that all the stakeholders are like their issues are addressed. Ultimately, the objective is how the products can be taken to the end consumers. Great. Let me go to Lee also and ask him. Lee, definitely you're working in a very technology space. So how do you see this, the technology thing for early stage, growth stage companies, how tech is acting as a great enabler, and how easy or difficult it is? Adoption, I can say.
Okay. Well, we're all about data. So it's anything we can do with data and understanding data and applying that to the customer base that we're dealing with, both for our own purposes and benefit, and also for the benefit of my customer, the merchant who's using Loyalty Dog, getting the most out of the data that he's getting it. so that's one area that we have to get very, very slick at,
Mhm.
and very so that we can predict better what people might want, so that they can plan their marketing, or use it, not to plan their marketing, but use the data that we can provide to inform the decisions that they're making in store. The other area that we see moving is that, as I mentioned slightly before, is the whole transaction process.
Mhm.
And I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I'm talking from a gut feel. You've mentioned Apple Pay before. You've mentioned we're all buying things in a different way, in an easier way than we used to do before.
Yeah.
The way we transact payments,
Mhm.
and somehow making that it's the innovation for me and for my area is going to be finding the way to make that even more frictionless, to use a term,
Absolutely.
making it less, having a lot less friction in that
Mhm.
whole in the transaction process itself, from choosing to getting,
Yeah.
all the way through that process. And there's a bit that we can do. I don't know yet exactly what it is,
Mhm.
but it's that. I mean, Apple Pay is one of those things, and
Yeah.
all those wallets, and going back to looking at cryptocurrencies as well at some point, coming into that mix, how that fits in.
Mhm.
Although if my wife heard me say that, she'd probably shoot me. She's an investment advisor, and she can't stand the whole cryptocurrency environment. She thinks it's wrong, it's awful. It'll never take part, and she's rants and raves about it quite a lot. I've heard them. I don't know. I just don't know. But it's certainly there. It's out there. Blockchain and all these other things that are coming in and changing and informing how we take decisions, and using that data that we've got. So data and payments are the two things that I see innovations that will be very useful in our area. What those are right now, to tell you it's going to be this, that. Well, if I knew, I wouldn't be talking to you, would I?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you said it rightly, and like how all these individual technologies has evolved itself. Like earlier, it was difficult to build a store. Then Shopify came up and they made it frictionless. Payment system came up, it made it frictionless, and all these apps for logistics, for making sure the emails go out, and all these things, all of these have evolved so much, and along with consumers, because consumers have a choice these days, and they want the best experience, just like when they go to an offline store, they want the experiences, and the more best experience gets offered, I think that customer becomes your lifetime customer.
just if I can,
Yeah.
just thinking about it as you say it, maybe not. Maybe the experience doesn't need to be very rich. Maybe the experience needs to be very, very thin, and it just needs to be pinpointed to exactly what, you know what I mean? Sometimes we talk about this thing that we all want to, you want to go into a store, you want to smell the coffee, you want to taste the carrot peel, you want to touch it, you want to feel it. Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe actually people want something a lot simpler. I don't know the answer to that question, but we maybe can talk ourselves into creating these, like you did, like Jordan did with the augmented reality. Sounds great, do it, and then suddenly we find a different reality coming back to us. Not all the buzzwords, not all the buzz things, things that go on in the world of marketing, sales, and advertising are what we should do.
Interesting. Yeah, absolutely. I think everything has to be, what you can say, everyone, there's a saying like too much of anything can be disaster. So it's best to have the balance of all these things, and ultimately to help the consumer. And like as you mentioned in the previous like customer service, for that matter, you can retain your consumer just through customer service also, where you have an irate customer and they have all their bad experience that they need someone to whom they can share that, and you can retain that customer. So all these little nuances make a huge difference for a brand, and I think when you're growing, everything matter. Every piece of advice that comes in for a store is great. um, as we are coming to an end of this panel discussion, I would love to have the last question for all of you. Is around you guys are running these different brands, and what is that one piece of advice that you would like to give to someone who is already running an e-commerce business, or who wants to launch an e-commerce business, from your own experiences, something that has worked best for you and that they can try, they can use, and it can help them? uh, Jordan, let me begin with you.
Yeah, it's hard to narrow it down to one single piece of advice. I think off the top of my mind, I know and I'm working for a company that like our marketing team has there are 11 of us. So I know that's not everyone's experience. And you might be working with a smaller team or a larger team, but for us, whenever we really nailed down, and this happened a few years ago, but we continue to evaluate it. But when we nailed down our brand voice and how we were going to present ourselves in the market, and even as granular as like giving examples of this is what a social media post would look like coming from us. This is what a product listing would look like coming from us. And these are the words that we use, and these are the words that we don't use, and having visuals and charts and scales. And I feel like that single piece has allowed our marketing department to put forth a much more cohesive image in all the different, channels that we each operate in, because we don't have just one person representing Prima in all these different areas. We have multiple people representing Prima. So it's allowed us to give a lot of consistency. But not only that, I think the people on my marketing team, I've seen them be able to settle into a level of comfort and confidence in the work that they're doing, because they're not always having to like second guess in the back of their head, like, is this what I should be saying, or is this how I should be saying it? They can really come forward with a sense of confidence and strength in what they're doing, which ultimately makes my job a lot easier, to be able to have like a really empowered team. So I would say it's great for a larger team, but even if it's just you or you and your partner, and you're working through where you're going to position yourself in the industry, going through and working out. I mean, there are so many guides you could probably find online of how to walk yourself through something like this, but taking the time to do it and prioritizing it, I think, is a great investment in the early stages that will pay off in the long haul of your business, regardless of how you choose to market. It's always going to be imperative that you have that solid voice behind what you're doing.
Wow, that's excellent. So having that openness within your teams to allow thoughts to come in, ultimately to help the brand, and creating that environment where everyone is tied to that vision, and having that alignment where people are not afraid or to share what their ideas, because I think some breathtaking ideas can come up from someone within the team, which no one might be thinking, and that can be a game changer. So that's an excellent insight that Jordan has touched, creating that collaborative environment and that culture to allow people to do and contribute great ideas, and having the right messaging, and where you are presenting your brand as a whole, and on all the channels. So excellent insight and excellent advice. Thank you so much, Jordan. Let me go to Lee. Lee, what is the advice that you would like to share from your experiences over the years?
You got me. I thought you were going to go to Lindsay first. Changed me up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I bumped you up.
No worries. Excuse me. We haven't got 11 people in the marketing team. We're a bunch of either direct sales guys and tech guys that have come together. So it's not quite as smooth as it should be. And I for me personally, hearing what you said, it's fantastic. So that's already I've already scored from being on the panel. The one thing that I do agree with, and I did this myself, is getting down to the core message that you want to give. And we have a number of statements that we make about what our product does for our customers. And it may not be the end of the line. It's the beginning. And we know that we've got these 4 pillars that all our content, all our marketing, all the things that we're trying to do, although it's not as refined as it could be, it's a work in progress, is built around. And the other thing I would say to anybody who's starting is really not to be afraid. Mistakes are going to be made, and you need to be to make mistakes and embrace the mistakes that you make and move forward. And it's important because nobody doesn't know. There is no one that has not made mistakes, and so you start a business, you're going to make mistakes. Obviously, you don't want to make too many or too big mistakes because you'll run out of money and you'll close your business. But don't be afraid to make the mistakes. Learn from them, reiterate, and carry on.
Excellent advice, Lee, I must say, because this is really important, as you mentioned. Don't be afraid to start up or do new things, or because I think unless you try, you don't know whether it's going to work or not. And I think not being afraid of making mistakes, that's what makes you go ahead and keep pushing yourself. That's an excellent advice, I think, in e-commerce or retail or any business for that matter. Perseverance is the key, and it may take 5 years, it may take 10 years, and it may take 20 years, just like what we have seen with other brands also. That's an excellent insight for any entrepreneur out there, or anybody who wants to just start up. If they believe in their idea and if they have the right mindset that they can execute, they can do great things. Excellent advice from Lee. Thank you, Lee. Let me go to Lindsay. Lindsay, from your experiences, what is that one piece of advice that you would like to share?
You know what? It's a combination of what both Jordan and Lee said. Is basically, I wrote it down. It's like, know your story, know who you are, but know when to pivot and evolve. So know when you've made a mistake, know how to incorporate like those learnings into your business, because getting off the ground is one thing. And like you said in the beginning, Kuldeep, it's really easy to make a store. There's so much that you need to build on, and it doesn't need to scare anyone away, but you do need to have like that one thing that you can come back to when things get so wild. And you're just like, because you will, if your business is successful, it gets so big and there's so many moving parts. And sometimes you need that one thing that you can come back to that can center yourself and remind yourself of why you're doing this and what you need to do. And the last thing I will say is like, it's when I get overwhelmed, stressed, and there's so many moving parts, it's like, you just do the next right thing. And it's that internal guidance of like, for the individual and for the team. If things are just like, even this morning, things are like moving and it's like, I've got, calls and all these things. And it's like, when I have to do that, it's like, bring back it to yourself and to the team. And it's like, for this moment, I'm doing it like this, like I'm some sort of guru, I'm not. But what I'm saying is like, it's very good to bring it back to that one core thing that can center yourself and your team when everything seems to like be growing out of control. And it's like, why did we do this? What is our mandate? What is our mission? And from there, it's like, then what is our next right move?
Wow, that's an excellent advice, Lindsay, I must say. Knowing the why, and then knowing and having that internal compass that guides you in order to achieve and move in that direction, and having that alignment within the teams and with your vision and how it can bring in those results. And as you mentioned it rightly, I think as things grow, as I think there's so many moving parts, and having that right approach and making sure that everyone knows why they're doing it really makes a huge difference. I think we have got some great piece of insight and advice from our panelists today. And I think some pearls of wisdom, I think, because this is something which is really needed in the times that we're living in, which are turbulent and unpredictable. And I think the only thing that can help us in finding our ways is by knowing why we are doing the things that we are doing. And with this, I would really like to take this opportunity once again to say thank you to each of you on behalf of my team at Enalito for joining on the panel. We would love to host you guys again in our future summit, maybe on some different topics. 60 minutes, I don't think is a very little duration. But we try to cover a lot. And I think everything that you have shared, I think if it can inspire someone, it can be a great enabler. So thank you so much, Lindsay, once again for joining in today. Jordan, thank you so much. Pleasure talking to you. Lee, thank you so much for joining in. And Thank you so much. I would love to chat with you guys again, learn more about your businesses, and would love to learn more about your ventures going forward. Thank you so much. You guys have a great week ahead, and more power to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for
Thank you.
having us.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Jordan. Thank you.
Terrific.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye.